let's work within this, right? The person on the voicemail that just played on the other video doesn't have any idea what they did wrong, and the person who's receiving it is holding it against them. Let's say that that's the world, okay? So let's come into that table, to that world. What are the things we know? Well, from your own admission, this person is hurt, which means it isn't a one-off, right? They know that this is a standing disagreement. This is a standing distance that exists, right? Other is you can know based on the person saying young lady, that that person feels like they are an adult and they have some form of authority that they feel like for addressing that, right? And that the other person they're addressing has to be an adult because it doesn't live with them, right? And then there's also a reference to a child, so probably not even a really young adult. Those are all factors to know, like, going into it. Okay, so then you have to think about, this is a known distance that exists, right? So the person who's receiving the voicemail has created this distance. For whatever reason, hasn't announced it, any of that, right? Living in this world. The person who's giving the voicemail knows this distance exists. And this isn't the first time they've encroached on it, right? This isn't the first time they've tried to like bridge the gap. And as a result of that tension, they'd still know that this distance is going to remain no matter how they move, right? So when you bridge the gap, when you're trying to like make the difference, you would normally ask questions, right? Like, what happened? What's going on? All of those things. In this voicemail, there are no questions given, right? So let's give the benefit of the doubt. Let's just assume she asked the questions and they were ignored, all right? Okay. So in this voicemail, then, what is the move? What is she trying to gain, right? She wants like relationship, or it seems like she would want relationship. So how do you go about that? Trying to build a gap, right? You have to build into the relationship, right? But if the person you're trying to build the relationship with is walking away from you, can you really build a relationship? Or are you just chasing somebody who doesn't want to be a part of it, right? Moving away. So her walking into the space, is that enabling the other person to actually participate in the relationship? Is it creating an environment where that would be needed or beneficial? Or is that other person already made it clear, even if this person who's giving the voicemail doesn't know why, that they want space? So would encroaching on that space make the other person inclined to communicate? Iffy. In the voicemail itself, it doesn't ask any questions, and it doesn't even offer, the person who's giving the voicemail isn't giving, this is how I feel. I don't know what's going on. I know you want space. I'm trying not to encroach on it, but this is how it's feeling. And I hate that this is how I feel. I wish we had, like, it's none of that sharing, right? This communication starts with, hey, young lady, and then it goes into talking about gifts, right? So if the goal isn't to bridge the gap with the relationship, because they've already learned that stepping forward is going to cause the other person to step back and that the space isn't going to change. They've already possibly asked questions to find out what it is and haven't gotten answers, but they're still encroaching on this space. And it's not going to build a relationship because they've already figured that out, right? Because this is a repetitive problem. They've occurred, all right? So then what is the point of the voicemail then? If it's not to create a relationship, what's the point of what the person is trying to say? Then there's the whole line of probably, right? I'll probably have to ship the kids' toys, right? Or the gifts. Probably. What that means is it's not certain, right? That there's a variant of like something could adjust that could make it so they don't have to. But if this person who's making the voice message knows that the other person's created space, there's only two cases of where there's a probability, there's something to change, right? They both can change, one person can change, or the other person can change, right? There's some type of change that would have to occur for probably to be true, right? And if the other person has already definitively created space, then we know it's not the other person who could possibly change. So that precipice and that possibly lays on the person who's leaving the voicemail, yet they still say probably. Why offer the probably if they know on the other end they're not changing and it's only them could change something? Why share it then? What's the point in sharing the probably? Like, there's a lot of weight to the probably. It also implies that there's been some discussion, there's been some understanding of what space can be taken up because there is a probably. There is a chance. That means they have a capability of having some type of relationship or some type of connection, or they're completely delusional, which I don't think it's that. So they have some type of means, and it's on them for whether that can occur or not, right? Like just based on context of saying probably, because it would be definitively if it's on the other person saying I want space, right? So what is the goal of this voicemail? If it's not to bridge the gap of the relationship because it doesn't offer any questions, it doesn't offer anything other than passive statements and implications, what is the goal? What is the point? What is gained? If you aren't wanting to bridge the gap of the relationship, the only thing that's left is changing the behavior of the other person. but there's no direct communication or questions asked of the other person. There's only statements of emotionally charged things, enough so that you, as a complete stranger, heard this voicemail and felt pain for that person and felt accusation for the person receiving it, right? So this is an emotionally charged voicemail. If you are trying to bridge a gap with another person who's created space and you leave an emotionally charged voicemail that has no directive and has no questions and it has no statements of like definitive, like trying to bridge it, what is the only goal? What is the only thing that's left? You're trying to give a voicemail to another person of an emotional charge. Why would you do that? If you're not trying to bridge the gap, because you can't, the only thing left is to get a different behavioral change, which means that they're not interested in the person's space that they've requested or having a good relationship. They just want it on their terms. Even in a world where they didn't understand, even in a world where they have no comprehension of what happened, they're still not respecting the space. For example, if I'm walking towards you and you walk away from me, and then I keep walking towards you, and every time I take a step towards you, you take a step back. And then I say, why are you doing that? And you completely ignore me, but I continue walking forward, you can continue walking back. I'm very well aware of the fact that you want space. And I can continue walking towards you, but that's not going to fix the relationship here. And me asking questions that you're not going to engage with isn't going to help anything either. So the only thing I can do is then respect the space that you have seen and shown, versus me standing there and saying passive communication of emotionally charged things at you. To get what end? Emotional manipulation, guilt, behavioral change, but not relationship. So even in a world where they don't understand what they're doing, they're still doing something that's not okay for if you want to have a good relationship.